My name is Evelyn Morgan. I am 36 years old and I work as an accountant at a small organic food company in St. Paul. Most of my days are predictable, shaped by balance sheets, Excel tabs, and the gentle hum of the heater in my office. I live alone in a quiet two-bedroom apartment on the top floor of a red brick building just south of the river. It's not much, but it suits me. There's enough room for my thoughts, my routines, and the kind of silence that only feels lonely if you let it. I've always been particular about things: how the books are arranged on the shelf, how my socks are folded, how my grocery list is written in the order of the aisles. Maybe it sounds rigid, but I find comfort in details. It gives shape to my world, and for the most part, I've never needed more. But every year, something in me shifts as the leaves begin to fall. By the first week of October, I've already begun planning for Christmas. I don't mean the kind of planning with Pinterest boards or themed playlists. I don't obsess over string lights or bake gingerbread from scratch. My version of planning is quiet, methodical, and intensely personal. I keep a list in the Notes app on my phone. Every gift idea, every hint dropped in casual conversation, every need or want that someone in my family mentioned in passing, I write it all down. My family is small but tightly wound like an old watch that ticks a little out of rhythm. My mother, Margaret, lives in Bloomington in the same house I grew up in. She's the kind of woman who believes in routine and practicality. My younger brother, Jason, is 4 years my junior. He lives with his wife, Lauren, and their 8-year-old twins, Emma and Liam. They're a lively household, always a little chaotic, often loud and filled with the kind of messy love you see in holiday movies. I've always been the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who sends money on time, who remembers birthdays, who shows up early and leaves late, usually after helping clean the dishes. This year, like every year, I started my gift list in early October. By mid-November, I had checked off nearly everything: a wooden puzzle for Liam, who'd recently gotten into brain teasers, a pink fleece hoodie for Emma, who had outgrown last winter's coat, a spa gift set for Lauren, and a set of artisan coffee syrups for Jason. For my mom, I found a silk scarf in a shade of forest green she used to wear when I was little. I even bought a red sweater for their dog Baxter with the words "Santa's Sidekick" embroidered across the back. Each gift was chosen with intention, not for show, not for approval, but because it made me feel close to them. In the quiet corners of my life, giving has always been my language, the only way I know how to say I care. Maybe that's why I also bought a few extras. Just in case: a lavender-scented candle, a couple of untagged toys, some locally made chocolate truffles. I told myself they were for guests or last-minute changes, but the truth is I've always been afraid of being unprepared. Not just for Christmas, but for the ache that sometimes follows when you feel forgotten. I wrapped each box in snowman paper and tied satin ribbons gold for Emma, blue for Liam. I hand-wrote cards with tiny messages, nothing too dramatic. Just simple things like, "Saw this and thought of you," or "Hope this brings you joy." I lined them all neatly beneath my small artificial tree. My living room smelled faintly of pine from the scented candle I lit each evening. The apartment was warm, tidy, and still. And somehow, despite the quiet, I felt connected to them through each folded piece of paper and knotted bow. I knew they might not notice the details. Jason never mentioned the effort I put into his gifts. My mom always said thank you, but never lingered on the gesture. Lauren appreciated things, but rarely said much aloud. The kids, at least, showed their delight with giggles and hugs. That was enough for me. Maybe that's what I've clung to, the idea that if I just gave enough, if I planned well enough, remembered often enough, loved quietly enough, then the space between us would shrink, that the invisible thread connecting me to them would tighten and stay strong. I don't have children of my own. I've never been married. I've never had someone who expected me to come home at the end of the day. But every December when I prepared those gifts, I felt like I had a place, a purpose, a role to fill, even if no one named it aloud. The week before Christmas, I looked at the stack of gifts and felt a rare flicker of peace. Everything was ready. I had done my part. I had built, with careful hands and a quiet heart, a kind of offering, not for praise, not even for thanks, but for the hope that maybe, just maybe, this year would feel whole. I didn't know then how wrong I would be. But in that moment, as snow brushed softly against the windows and soft light glowed from my tree, I let myself believe in the quietest joy, the joy of giving without asking for anything in return, the joy of feeling, even for a little while, like I belonged. It came just after 7 in the morning, December 23rd. My phone buzzed on the nightstand while I was still half asleep, the screen lighting up the dim bedroom. I reached for it without thinking, expecting a weather alert or maybe a holiday sale notification. Instead, I saw my mother's name. Her message was short, 16 words. Jason's family wants to celebrate privately this year. Please don't come. Sorry for the late notice. I blinked at it, rereading it twice, 3 times. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe she meant to send it to someone else. Maybe she was referring to some gathering. I didn't know about some side event that didn't include the main celebration. I stared at the words, trying to make them mean something else. Don't come. I sat up slowly, the cold from the hardwood floor seeping through my socks as I swung my legs over the side of the bed. My heart was pounding, but not from panic, from confusion, from disbelief. I rubbed my eyes and read the message again. It hadn't changed. I texted her back. Is everything okay? Did something happen? No response. I waited 5 minutes, then called her. It rang until voicemail. I tried again, voicemail. A third time, still nothing. That's when the second message came. This one from Jason. You don't need to come. There's no place for someone who doesn't understand her role anymore. I dropped the phone. Just let it fall onto the bed. My body stayed upright, but my thoughts collapsed inward like paper folding itself into a shape I didn't recognize. I had to be dreaming. There was no way this was real. I picked the phone back up with shaking fingers. The words were still there. Cold, blunt, final. I stared at them for what felt like hours. The light from the window began to shift, the early gray of morning brightening into the glare of a winter sun. Though nothing felt warm, I had planned everything. I had wrapped, the gifts tied, the ribbons written, the cards I had baked, shortbread cookies the night before. I even packed extra gloves in case the twins forgot theirs again. And now, suddenly, I was uninvited. No, not even that discarded. I walked into the living room barefoot now, the cold floor grounding me. The tree glowed softly in the corner, the gifts still arranged neatly beneath it, gold and blue ribbons, little snowman faces on the wrapping paper, a red sweater for Baxter folded on top of the pile. I stood there staring, unable to move. My breathing had gone shallow, like I had forgotten how to do it right. This couldn't be happening. I thought of last Christmas. Jason had called me in the middle of the night, panicked about Emma's asthma medication. I drove through a snowstorm to bring it to them. The year before, that they didn't have enough for a tree, so I bought one and had it delivered. I remembered the birthday parties I helped fund, the emergency rent payments, the winter coats I picked out for the kids when Lauren quietly told me they were outgrowing everything. Every moment flickered in my memory, a reel of invisible generosity. I had never asked for anything in return. Not once. Not a thank you card. Not even acknowledgement. I just did it because that's what family meant to me. And now I was being told I didn't belong. I sat down on the couch, still in my pajamas, the tree lights blinking beside me. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint buzz of the refrigerator in the kitchen. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. I was afraid of what else it might say. Afraid that this time it would be from my mother again, confirming everything in colder terms. What had I done wrong? Had I missed something? Had I misunderstood my place all along? I tried to remember the last time Jason had said anything kind to me. Really kind. Not polite, not obligatory, but heartfelt. I couldn't. I remembered times he asked for help and I gave it. I remembered times he said, "You're the only one I can count on." I remembered Lauren thanking me quietly, almost ashamed. But love, I had assumed it was there. I had assumed it was built into the acts, into the gifts, into the money transferred, and the phone calls answered late at night. Now all of that felt hollow. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my hands gripping each other tightly in my lap. I kept looking at the tree as if the sight of the gifts would somehow rewire the last 30 minutes and take me back to the version of the morning where everything still made sense. It didn't. I felt like a stranger in my own life, like the rules of everything I had built had shifted without warning and I had been left behind. I didn't cry. Not yet. There was something about the disbelief that kept the tears at bay, as if crying would mean accepting that this was real. I sat there for a long time. I didn't make breakfast. I didn't shower. I didn't even move the gifts. I just sat surrounded by everything I had done to show love and wondered how I could have meant so little. I spent most of the morning in silence, unable to pull myself away from the couch, the tree, the unanswered questions. By afternoon, the light outside had dulled into a soft gray snow starting to gather on the corners of my window panes. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't showered, but I had made a decision. I needed to see them. I told myself there had been a mistake, that maybe Mom had sent the message in a moment of frustration or confusion, that Jason had worded things poorly, that if I showed up gifts in hand with the smile I'd been practicing for weeks, everything would snap back into place. I packed the presents into large canvas bags, each labeled and neatly tied. I placed them gently in the trunk of my car and started the engine. The heater whined as it came to life, blowing air that smelled faintly of dust. I didn't bother with music. The silence suited the drive. It let me hold on to a thread of hope that hadn't fully snapped yet. The roads were slick, the sky dim with thick clouds. As I got closer to Bloomington, familiar landmarks passed by like ghosts. The grocery store where Mom used to take us after school. The gas station Jason and I used to bike to for candy. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. When I turned onto my parents' street, I felt it before I saw it. The tension, the hollowness. Their house looked beautiful from the outside. White lights traced the roofline. A glowing wreath hung on the front door. Through the large bay window, I could see the top of their Christmas tree glimmering with ornaments we had collected over decades. For a moment, it looked like nothing had changed. But no one was outside. No children's laughter, no barking from the dog, no signs of life beyond the warm glow of the tree. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. My fingers hovered on the keys for a moment before I pulled them out. I opened the trunk, lifting out the bags one by one. My hands were cold, even through my gloves. My breath formed clouds in the air. When I reached the porch, I hesitated. The welcome mat still said, "Home, sweet home." I adjusted the bags in my hands and rang the doorbell. Once, twice. Footsteps, then the click of the deadbolt. The door opened a few inches. My mother stood there in a deep red sweater, her hair pulled back like it always was during the holidays. Her face was tight, her eyes tired. "Evelyn," she said quietly, not warmly, not kindly, just a name. "I got your message," I said. I thought maybe it was a mistake." Her eyes didn't meet mine. It wasn't. I stood there stunned. The wind pushed against my back as if urging me to walk away, but I didn't. "Mom, I brought everything. The gifts, the food, the scarf. I picked out for you. I just wanted to be here." She glanced behind her and I heard footsteps approaching from the hallway. Jason. He stepped up beside her arms. Crossed expression, unreadable. "Just say it, Mom," he muttered. "She's not welcome." My heart sank so fast it felt like I couldn't breathe. I looked at him, searching for something familiar, a flicker of warmth, a shred of the boy who used to cry when I left for college. But all I saw was contempt. "You don't need to be here," Jason said, his voice flat. "We're doing fine without you." "I didn't come to cause trouble," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "I came because I thought maybe this year could be like all the others. I planned everything I thought." "You haven't helped us in months," he cut in sharply. "You stopped sending money. You act like you're better than us, driving around in your new car, living your little quiet life. Meanwhile, we're figuring things out without you." I stared at him. That car is on a payment plan, and I haven't stopped caring. I've given everything I could for years. "Jason, I helped pay for Emma's therapy. I bought the kids' school clothes. I've covered more bills than I can count." He shrugged. "So what?" That doesn't mean you get to insert yourself whenever you want. This year isn't about you." My mother still hadn't spoken. She just looked down her hands, wringing the edge of her sweater. I turned to her. "Mom, please, I'm your daughter." She finally looked at me then, but the expression in her eyes was not one I recognized. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was weariness, detachment. "I told you not to come, Evelyn," she said softly. "You should have listened." For a second, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My chest ached with something deeper than pain. It was rejection layered over decades of silence. It was the realization that love in this house had always come with conditions. I tightened my grip on the gift bags. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "If that's what you want, I won't bother you again." I stepped backward off the porch, the snow crunching beneath my boots. I didn't look back. As I reached my car, Jason called after me, his voice coated in sarcasm. "Merry Christmas, Evelyn. Don't forget your presents. No one here wants them." I said nothing. I opened the trunk, set the bags down gently, and climbed into the driver's seat. My fingers trembled as I closed the door and stared at the house. The yard lights glowed softly. The wreath on the door swayed in the wind. It all looked so normal, like a scene from a holiday card. But I knew better now. Some doors once closed don't open again, not the same way. And some silences aren't meant to be filled. The drive back felt longer than it had any right to. Snow had begun falling steadily by the time I left their driveway. Fat, quiet flakes drifting down in the kind of stillness that used to make winter feel magical. Now it only felt heavy. The road ahead was blurred by soft white, and everything behind me disappeared as if the last few hours hadn't happened. But they had. I could still feel them pressing on my chest. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. The silence in the car felt like the only honest thing left. No noise to distract, no melody to soften the truth. Just me and the sound of my tires rolling slowly over the snow-covered road, each mile pulling me further away from the house I had once called home. My hands gripped the wheel too tightly. My fingers were stiff and cold, even with the heater blowing at full strength. My eyes kept returning to the rearview mirror, though there was nothing there but the darkened street and thickening snowfall. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to see. Someone running out to stop me, a sign that I'd misunderstood everything. But I had understood perfectly. By the time I pulled into the small lot beside my building, my body felt drained. I stepped out into the cold and opened the trunk. The bags were still there, ribbons still tied, cards still attached. I lifted them slowly, carefully, as if they were made of something fragile. Or maybe it was me that felt breakable. Inside my apartment, the heat greeted me, but it didn't feel warm. I turned on the lights and carried the gifts to the dining table. One by one, I placed them down. Then I stood back and looked at them. The snowman paper, the thoughtful tags, the color-coded bows. It had all been for them. Every item, every detail meant to show I had been listening, that I cared. Now they looked like evidence, proof of a truth I hadn't wanted to face. I walked to the kitchen and filled a glass of water but didn't drink it. I just held it, the cool glass grounding me as my mind slipped into memory. I remembered when Jason first called me about needing help with the kids' school fees. Emma had just started kindergarten and they were behind on payments. He sounded desperate. I wired the money before he even finished the sentence. That became the pattern. School supplies, winter coats, a broken refrigerator, a missed rent check. Every time I came through, I told myself it was because I loved them, because I didn't have a family of my own, and this was my way of showing up. But now I couldn't stop thinking about how rarely anyone had checked on me, how few times Jason had asked how I was doing, how often I was thanked with silence. It wasn't just love, it was transaction disguised as devotion. I sat down at the table across from the stack of gifts and placed the untouched glass beside me. My legs felt heavy like they had run a marathon without moving. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the wood, and looked at the tag on the topmost box. To Emma, with love, I had written it in gold ink. My phone buzzed softly. I didn't jump. I had stopped expecting good news from that sound. The screen lit up with a message from Lauren. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I didn't agree with how Jason treated you. I just didn't have the courage to speak up." I stared at the words for a long time. My first reaction was anger, not rage, but that quiet heat that sits beneath the skin, the kind that comes from being left alone in a moment that demanded something more. I had stood on that porch, my arms full, my voice small, and she had stayed silent. But under the anger was something else, something gentler. Sadness, maybe. Not just for me, but for her. For all the ways she had probably silenced herself to keep the peace in that house. I didn't reply right away. I wasn't sure what to say. Instead, I walked to the living room and turned off the tree lights. The glow faded, leaving the room in shadow. I sat down on the couch and pulled the blanket over my lap. The silence filled the space around me again, but this time it didn't hurt. It felt like a boundary. A soft wall rising between who I had been and who I was becoming. I knew then that I wasn't going back. Not to the version of me who made herself smaller to be accepted. Not to the role of fixer, of giver, of the sister who never asked for anything in return. I picked up my phone again and typed a reply to Lauren. "Thanks for reaching out. I'm not angry, but everything is going to be different now." I pressed send and set the phone down. In the stillness, I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to breathe. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't hoping for a call or an apology. I wasn't holding space for people who had let me stand alone. I was holding space for myself, and in that space, even with the ache still fresh, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The next morning, I woke to a cold apartment and a dull ache behind my eyes. I had slept, but not deeply, not restfully. My body had shut down, more than rested, the kind of sleep you fall into when your mind can't take any more. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, staring at the faint light coming through the blinds. I didn't cry. I hadn't since the porch. Instead, I got up, made coffee, and turned on my laptop. My financial tracker had always been my anchor, a simple spreadsheet broken down month by month with a tab for every year. I started it years ago, mostly out of habit. Every dollar I spent, saved, or gave away was there. Organized, color-coded, labeled, I knew the numbers. But until that morning, I had never looked at them all together. I opened a new tab. At the top, I typed in bold, plain letters, Jason. Family support. Then I started listing the transfers, the dates, the descriptions. March 4th, 2019, school tuition for Emma, $950 July 10th, 2019, rent assistance, born $200 November 22nd, 2019, car repair for Lauren, $685 January 12th, 2020, new clothes for the twins, $430 May 6th, 2020, Jason's emergency dental, $300 December 1st, 2020, Christmas fund, $1,000 February 14th, 2021, grocery card, $250 July 3rd, 2021, summer camp deposit, $600 September 9th, 2021, utility bill shortfall, $420, and so on. Line after line, year after year. Some I remembered clearly, like the call I got from Jason saying their electricity was about to be shut off. I had wired the money before finishing my lunch. Others were buried in memory, small transfers for shoes, books, medical copays. I never questioned it, I just said, of course, and did what needed to be done. By the time I finished scrolling through 5 years of data, my stomach felt hollow. The total was just over $32,000. I sat back in my chair, hand resting on the mouse, the cursor blinking at the bottom of the column. That number should have made me angry, and in some quiet way it did. But more than that, it clarified things. For years, I had been playing a role I thought came from love, but seeing the numbers laid out not as emotional moments but as data points changed everything. I had been a provider, a silent partner in their lives, not a sister, not a daughter, not someone to be invited or cherished. Just a reliable source. I stared at the spreadsheet and realized something I had never let myself admit. They hadn't come to expect my help because I offered it freely. They had come to expect it because they stopped seeing me as someone who needed anything in return. I had become a function, a solution. And when I stopped solving, I stopped mattering. I clicked save on the document and sat in the stillness of my small kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Outside, the snow had stopped, but everything was still white and unmoving. I felt the same, still changed. I picked up my phone. Lauren's message from the night before was still there. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I didn't agree with how Jason treated you. I just didn't have the courage to speak up." I had read it over a dozen times. And now I finally replied, "Thanks for reaching out. I'm not angry, but I won't be playing that role anymore." I didn't elaborate. I didn't scold or explain. I didn't ask for anything. I simply drew a line, one that had been too long in coming. I set the phone down beside the laptop and opened a new tab. Not for Jason this time, for me. At the top I typed, "What I've given, what I'm taking back." The first row was blank, but beneath it I typed time. Then space. Then silence. Each word settled into place like puzzle pieces clicking where they belonged. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a lesson I wanted to teach someone else. It was a slow, deliberate return to myself, a quiet withdrawal from a role that had asked too much for too long. I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be when I felt hurt. What I felt now was cleaner, like something had burned away and left clarity in its place. I didn't need to announce it. I didn't need anyone to agree. I had the ledger, the truth, the numbers that didn't lie. And for once, I wasn't ashamed of keeping track. For once, I understood that documenting what I gave wasn't selfish. It was survival. That morning, I closed the laptop and poured myself another cup of coffee. I didn't toast to anything. I didn't say anything aloud. I just stood by the window and watched as the wind began to pick up again, scattering powdery snow across the rooftops. The world hadn't changed, but I had. And this time I had the proof. It was early February when I received the call. I had just come in from a walk, cheeks stinging from the cold, when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, unfamiliar. "Hello, is this Evelyn Morgan?" "Yes." "My name is Anthony Sullivan. I'm an attorney representing a client who recently uncovered financial records that involve you. I was asked to reach out directly if you're willing to meet." There was a long pause. I stood in the middle of my kitchen boots, still on jacket unzipped. The heat from the vents blew softly across my back. "Is this about Jason?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Yes, I represent Lauren Morgan. She thought it best you heard this in person." We scheduled a time for the following day. I didn't ask for more information. He didn't offer any. The next morning, I found myself outside a small office building in downtown St. Paul, brick walls, a single glass door and the name Sullivan and Hartman on a modest placard beside the entrance. The interior was quiet, warm, and smelled faintly of old books and strong coffee. Anthony Sullivan greeted me in a small conference room, mid-40s, dressed in a charcoal suit, polite without being distant. He gestured for me to sit, then placed a folder on the table in front of me. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know this might be difficult, but Lauren felt you had a right to know." He opened the folder and slid it toward me. Inside were documents, printed bank statements, email screenshots, highlighted transfers, and notes. It took me only seconds to recognize my name on the top line of several transfers. 950, Ward 200, 600, all familiar. But the line that followed each one wasn't. A second account, different routing numbers, different names. Jason Morgan listed as primary under the name JM Holdings. This account, Anthony said, tapping the page gently, was unknown to Lauren until recently. She discovered it while reviewing their joint taxes. "What's troubling is that many of the transfers from your account were redirected here." I flipped to the next page, a printout of digital transaction records. Gambling sites, hotel bookings, high-end retail stores, none of them related to the kids, none of them tied to family needs. One charge stood out. $2,300 at a luxury resort in Colorado. I closed my eyes for a moment. I remembered Jason calling that week. He said Emma had bronchitis. He needed help covering prescriptions and missed work days. I had wired him $750 without hesitation. My chest tightened. Anthony continued speaking, but his voice was a soft hum behind the roar in my head. I turned to the next page. Text messages not mine. Ones between Jason and someone listed only as G. Just ask Evelyn, one message read. She never says no. Another said, she thinks helping makes her important. Just play the kids need it card. There were more too many. She's basically a credit card with feelings. I stared at those words until they blurred. I didn't blink. I didn't move. My hands lay flat on the table, but I could feel the blood pulsing through them. Anthony's voice returned to focus. She's not pursuing legal action. Not yet, but she wanted you to be informed, especially if Jason attempts to use your name or if the situation escalates. She wanted to make sure you weren't caught off guard. I nodded slowly, though I didn't feel entirely present. My mind was moving in sharp fragments. The Christmas gifts, the late-night calls, the short thank yous, if any. Every decision I had made, every dollar I had sent, every story I had believed without question. I wasn't just taken advantage of. I was mocked for it. That's all we have at this time, Anthony said gently. Lauren believes you had no knowledge of the account or its use. She wanted you to see the truth. I reached out and closed the folder slowly. My fingers were cold again. My heart was not. I'd like to keep this, I said. Of course. He stood and offered a quiet, respectful handshake. I'm sorry it had to come to this. I nodded again, too full of silence to answer. Outside, the snow had returned, soft flakes drifting down against the windshield of my car. I sat behind the wheel for a long while without turning the key. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I replayed the last few years like a slow reel of confession. Every time I thought I was helping. Every time I told myself I was needed. Every time I put aside my own needs because family came first. But family hadn't seen me. Jason hadn't seen me. He saw access, not love. He saw opportunity, not trust. He saw a credit card with feelings. I drove home without the radio. My hands never left the 10 and 2 position on the wheel. Back in my apartment, I placed the folder on the dining table next to the now dusty gifts I still hadn't unwrapped or moved. The weight of that folder wasn't in the paper. It was in the truth it carried. I didn't know what I would do next. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never be the same again. It was a Saturday evening quiet. Like most of mine, I had just finished cleaning the kitchen after cooking a simple pasta dish when the knock came. Not a gentle knock, not the kind you expect from a neighbor or delivery driver. This one was hard, urgent, demanding. I knew before I even looked through the peephole. Jason. He stood there in his thick winter coat, shoulders hunched, snow clinging to his boots. His face was pale, his jaw tight. His eyes, once familiar, looked more like corners I had learned to avoid. I opened the door only halfway. What are you doing here? I asked. You haven't been answering your phone? He said. His voice was clipped, irritated. I had to come. I know I said that was the point. He looked past me, trying to see inside. Can we talk? I didn't move. Say what you need to say from there. Jason exhaled sharply, his breath fogging in the cold air. You don't get to shut me out like this. Evelyn, this is still family. What you're doing, it's not right. I felt my hands curl slightly around the edge of the door, but I kept my voice even. What I'm doing is setting a boundary, something I should have done years ago. His expression changed, eyes narrowing. You think this is about you being the victim? You walked away. You left. Mom confused. Lauren upset the kids asking questions. I left because you told me not to come. I said I left because you stood behind Mom and said I wasn't welcome. You don't get to rewrite that part. He stepped closer. We were going through things. You know how stressful the holidays are? You took it too personally. I was told I wasn't needed, that I didn't know my role. Those were your exact words. Jason's jaw clenched. You're making this into a war. No, I said quietly. I'm ending one. He hesitated. I could see the flicker of desperation return. He was good at hiding it, but not from me. Not anymore. I'm in trouble, Evelyn, he said. Lauren's leaving. She's threatening to take the kids. She froze the accounts. I'm backed into a corner. I didn't say anything. He went on, "You know what that looks like, right? For me to lose my family, for my kids to think, I just gave up." "You didn't give up," I said. "You lied. You used money I sent for gambling and hotels and whatever else you felt entitled to. You turned my name into a backup plan." His face flushed. "That's not fair. You don't understand the pressure I've been under." I raised an eyebrow. "Don't tell me about pressure. I paid your bills while managing my own. I skipped vacations I pulled from my retirement account to cover your mortgage last year, and you never even asked how I was doing." "That's not true," he snapped. "Yes, it is," I said, voice firm now. "You never called unless you needed something. You never said thank you unless it followed a transfer. I stopped being your sister a long time ago. I became a safety net, and you only notice a net when it's gone." He took a step back, pacing slightly, hands on his hips. Then he turned toward me again, his tone sharper. "You know she's going to bring lawyers into this. She's already got people digging. If my name goes down, yours might be dragged in too. That money came from your account. Think about that." I stared at him. "Are you threatening me?" "No," he said, but his voice faltered. "I'm just saying you're involved whether you want to be or not." "No," I said slowly. "I was involved when I thought I was helping your family, when I believed you. What you did with that money after it left my hands, that's on you." His face twisted into something almost unrecognizable. "You're going to let me drown over this." "I didn't push you under," I said. "You did that all by yourself." He stood there in the doorway, breathing hard. I could see the fight in him, desperation trying to wear the mask of anger. It used to work on me, not anymore. "You've changed," he muttered. "Yes," I said, "I have. I finally stopped mistaking obligation for love." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but nothing came out. Just a heavy silence between us. I stepped back. "You should go now." He stared at me for one last second. Then he turned and walked down the hallway, his boots leaving slush marks behind him. I closed the door, locked it. And then I stood there for a while, breathing slowly. The apartment was quiet again. The hum of the radiator, the only sound. My hands were still for once, not shaking, not reaching for my phone, not checking a bank app to see what I could afford to give away. I wasn't afraid. Not of Jason, not of what he might say, not even of what came next. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. I walked back to the kitchen, reheated my pasta, and sat at the table with the folder from the attorney still resting nearby. I didn't need to open it. I already knew who I was now, and it wasn't someone else's rescue plan. It was late on a Tuesday afternoon when Lauren called. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, sorting through monthly bills when her name lit up my screen. I hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure what kind of conversation this might become. Her voice came through soft but steady. "Evelyn, I've made a decision." There was no hesitation in her tone. It was the first time I had heard her speak with such certainty. "I'm taking the kids," she said. "We're leaving this weekend." I didn't say anything at first. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Not rushed, just deliberate, like someone who had practiced these words in her head and was finally ready to speak them aloud. "Are you sure I asked?" "Yes," she replied. "Jason's leaving for a conference in Cleveland on Friday. He'll be gone 3 days. That's my window. I already have a place lined up in Des Moines. It's small, but it's clean, and the school district is good." I could hear her trying to stay composed, but there was a crack of emotion in her last sentence. "I don't want Emma and Liam growing up in a house where silence means fear." She said, "They deserve more than that. I deserve more than that." "You do," I said. "What do you need from me?" She paused. I knew it was hard for her to ask. "I hate to ask this," she began, "but the deposit and the first month's rent. It's a lot. I don't want to use our joint account. I can't risk him noticing the withdrawal before I'm gone." "I'll send it," I said immediately. "You don't need to explain. Send me the details." "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "This time I'm not doing it out of guilt. I'm doing it because I believe in what you're doing." She was quiet for a second. Then I heard a sniffle. "Thank you." We spoke for another few minutes. She had already packed most of the essentials: clothes, school records, the kids' favorite toys. A small moving truck would arrive Saturday morning, and she planned to leave before noon. I haven't told anyone, she said. Not even Jason's parents. I don't want anyone trying to talk me out of it. You're doing the right thing, I told her, and you're not alone. After we hung up, I opened my bank app and transferred the funds. It wasn't a massive amount, but enough to cover the security deposit rent and a little extra cushion for groceries and essentials. I didn't even hesitate. The next morning, Lauren sent me a photo of the apartment beige walls, a small balcony, a modest kitchen with old cabinets, and a view of a quiet street. To anyone else, it might have looked ordinary. To me, it looked like freedom. On Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Another photo. Emma and Liam sat on top of cardboard boxes, grinning wide. Emma had a stuffed unicorn in her lap. Liam held a plastic robot above his head like a trophy. Behind them, the sunlight poured in through an open window, casting soft lines across the hardwood floor. They looked happy. Not just smiling for the camera Happy Truly light. Beneath the photo, Lauren had written a simple caption. "Goodbye, old house. Hello, new life." I stared at the picture for a long time. Then I saved it to a folder on my laptop and named it something I had never used before. New Beginnings. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment sink in. Not just for them, but for me. For years, I had given without pause, thinking it was the only way I'd be accepted, that if I kept showing up, kept providing, kept fixing, they would eventually see me, understand me, value me. But it was this quiet moment of choice that felt more powerful than all the years of trying. I had helped, yes. But this time, it wasn't about holding anyone together. It was about giving someone the tools to build something of their own. And in doing so, I had taken a step forward too. No more rescues from obligation. Only help that honored both the giver and the receiver. The old Evelyn might have waited for a thank you, might have clung to the gesture needing proof that she mattered, but not this version. Not the woman sitting alone in her living room watching the snow melt outside the window, her heart finally still. Later that evening, I made a cup of tea and curled up on the couch. I looked again at the photo of the twins on the boxes. I could still hear their laughter in my mind. I imagined Lauren standing behind the camera, probably exhausted, probably overwhelmed, but finally breathing on her own terms. That was enough. That was everything. I closed my eyes and let that image settle inside me, Emma and Liam. A new apartment, a mother choosing peace, and me on the outside, but no longer left out. This wasn't about being part of the family anymore. This was about building something new, something real, something chosen. I sipped my tea and whispered aloud to the quiet room. "You're going to be okay." And for the first time in a very long while, I meant it. Spring came slowly that year, inching in through the melting snow and quiet winds that no longer bit through my coat. The streets that had once been dusted in silence were now touched by the sound of new life bikes returning to sidewalks, birds in the trees, laughter echoing faintly from open windows. I had changed, too, in ways that didn't make noise. I started volunteering at the local library on Friday afternoons. Nothing grand, just helping kids find books, reading with the ones who struggled, pointing out the series I used to love when I was their age. It grounded me. Their excitement over simple stories reminded me that joy didn't always need to be complex, it just needed to be shared. I also bought a guitar, a small affordable one with a dark wood finish and steel strings that bit into my fingertips as I practiced. I didn't play for anyone but myself. Sometimes I'd sit by the window and strum a few soft chords, letting the notes rise and fall into the kind of silence I now welcomed. Lauren and I spoke every week, usually Sunday evenings. No drama, no tension, just two women catching up. She would tell me about the new apartment, how Emma had joined a soccer team, and Liam was obsessed with space documentaries. I'd show her the newest song I was learning, or the batch of cookies I had attempted and mostly succeeded at. We didn't talk about Jason unless we needed to. When we did, it was brief and factual. No bitterness. Just acknowledgement of what had been and what would never be again. My parents stayed quiet for the most part. A single voicemail came from my mother around Easter. She said she hoped I was well and reminded me that Jason was still family. I deleted it without reply, not out of anger, but because I finally understood that peace didn't require permission. Their silence used to feel like exile. Now it simply felt like distance, and I had learned how to live beyond it. One morning in late April, I received a package. There was no return address, just my name and a small envelope taped to the front. Inside was a drawing folded carefully. Crayons on white paper, a house with a red roof, two stick-figure children playing in a green yard, a woman standing in the window with soft curls and a yellow glow drawn around her head and shoulders. At the bottom, written in blocky letters that were still learning where to land, were the words, "This is our new house. Mommy says Aunt Evelyn is the sunshine in the window." I stared at it for a long time. Then I set it gently on the coffee table, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a cup of tea. I carried the cup back to the living room and sat down, folding my legs beneath me. The drawing lay before me, full of something I couldn't name at first. Then I realized it was gratitude, not for the money I had sent, or the gifts I had wrapped, or the years I had given without asking for anything, but for the quiet presence I had become, the person who didn't abandon them, the one who stayed even after stepping away from everything else. I didn't need to be part of their photo albums or holiday dinners anymore. I didn't need to be thanked in front of others or praised for what I had done. This one drawing this tiny declaration of love in a child's handwriting was more than enough. It told me I mattered. I hung the picture above my desk where the morning light could reach it. Each time I sat there to pay bills or write in my journal or check in with work, I would glance at it and remember. I was not invisible. I had not failed. I had simply been misplaced, and now I had found my own place again. The apartment still held its quiet. The tree was long gone, the gifts either donated or repurposed. The folders from the attorney were packed away in a drawer I rarely opened. They were part of the story, but no longer the whole story. Now I filled my days with different things. Slow walks through the park, quiet dinners with a glass of wine and a good book, conversations that didn't center around fixing someone else's chaos. I didn't chase closeness anymore. I didn't offer myself in pieces, hoping someone might assemble me back into meaning. Instead, I built meaning in the little rituals that were mine alone. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window at night, just a woman in a warm room, a book in one hand and tea in the other. No applause, no performance, just presence. And when I looked closer, I saw it there too. That soft golden glow. Not around my head like Emma had drawn. But within, I smiled quietly to myself, the kind of smile that doesn't need to be seen to be real. I wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. I had already come home. Evelyn's story is a quiet reminder that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it looks like walking away from what no longer serves you. Sometimes it means choosing peace over obligation and dignity over approval. Through loss and betrayal, she found something far more lasting than praise or permission. She found herself. Her journey speaks to anyone who has ever felt unseen, used, or unappreciated. But it also speaks to the power of reclaiming your worth and rewriting your role not out of bitterness, but out of quiet courage. If this story touched you, we invite you to comment, or share your thoughts below. Your voice matters here. And if you want more stories about resilience, rediscovery, and second chances, consider subscribing. You never know who might need to hear this next.